What happens when you take two guys from New York who absolutely love to talk and give them a license to rant? You get your hosts, John Peasy and Mikey Sausage.
I like all the laughter that bleeds in as we come in. I love that. Mikey, you look pretty excited today. You look pretty taking some sun or something, or what's happening?
Yes, good. I'm glad you did that because I'm just out and about, and it's been nice out, and I've been happy. And actually, remember that joke that you told at that Orthodox party that got you into trouble with a 10-year-old boy and girl?
I was trying to forget about it, but yeah.
I told it to my Jewish doctor, and he loved it.
Did he really?
Yeah, he loved it.
No.
I mean, he's kosher, he eats kosher, all that stuff, but I don't think it's as much as you were in like that strict environment. Because he said, I can see where that's a problem. Because as soon as you start mixing male and female adults, it's an issue. Never mind children with like some kind of quickie.
I'm not going to repeat my wife.
Everybody's wondering about the joke.
What's the joke? Yeah, I'm not going to tell the joke. I will tell you, I told it to my wife, and she thought it was disgusting. Because she goes, you never involve children and sex and this, and I said, but you don't see the punch coming. So,
but now, if you want to hear that joke, go watch our interview with Michelle Welch.
Right, last week's Michelle Welch.
Yeah, now just watch the whole show. At some point, it's the joke is going to come up. So
that's
a
great.
Not that
that's
I'm
great joke.
Not going to try to force you into it.
The clean joke. Here's the clean Jewish joke. So a rabbi sitting on a bench eating matzah. A blind guy sits next to him. He gives him a piece, and the blind guy goes, "Hey, who wrote this shit?" That's clean, and that doesn't.
Now,
hurt
you don't say shit. Do you say shit?
No, this stuff, this crap.
Yeah. It's tough.
All of that. Hey,
so
listen,
you've been busy.
This is super interesting because Michelle Welch was great, and she has the same PR agent as this gentleman today. And
okay.
Yeah, this Eileen is a wonderful PR agent. John Galasso ran into, and
look how I did that promotion, not even knowing that. Look how good I am.
You're a natural. So I read this gentleman's book. By the way, we have nothing. I want to get him right in because we have a lot to rant about, don't we?
No,
I want to start ranting about what's going on right now. There's so much going on that I want to rant about. But honestly, this is a super interesting guy, and he has a really wonderful story. I've read most of this book today, not over the last couple of days, actually, most of it. And this is not the only book he has. He has several books, actually. But this man's credits is way too big for you and me on this show, as far as I'm concerned. He has an impressive resume, besides being a wonderful author. So he has a book called Dignity for Deeply Forgetful People, How Caregivers Can Give and Meet the Challenges of Alzheimer's Disease, which is really important. There's so many people that are ill that have these problems, and we don't know how to handle these things. So that's one. He has another book called Why Good Things Happen to Good People, How to Live Longer, Healthier, Happier Life by the Simple Act of Giving. So, Mikey, not only that, he has a couple other books called The Moral Challenge of Alzheimer's Disease, which is the ethical issues from diagnosis to dying. So he, I guess, is teaching people how to die with dignity and how to take care of other people. There are a lot of ethical issues. And he has this great book, which I just was saying about God and Love on Route 80, The Hidden Mysteries of Human Connectedness, with a foreword by the Dalai Lama. And I've read the Dalai Lama's books. I'm a big fan of all the Dalai Lama's work, and just to have a foreword by him is really wonderful. His name is Dr. Stephen Post, and he's a best-selling author, and he's a former professor in the School of Medicine at Case Western Reserve University and senior research scholar at the Beckett Institute of St. Hugh's College, Oxford University member of College of Physicians of Philadelphia, and the New York Academy of Medicine and the Royal Science Society of Medicine in London. He's the president of the Institute.
You're showing off now with all these credits now.
The president of the Institute of listen to this. The president of the Institute for Research and Unlimited Love. That's one great long line. Recipient of a Distinguished Service Award from the National Alzheimer's Association. A recipient of the Pioneer Medal for Outstanding Leadership in Healthcare from Healthcare. This goes on and on. And it's just amazing. What a life. And then once you hear the story, I can't wait to get him on. So Please welcome Stephen G. Post, public speaker and author. Stephen, we could spend the whole thing just giving your resume.
But after that, you got to call him doctor.
He is the doctor.
Just say, he's his wife's husband. That's all I need.
Not for nothing. After you introduced this guy, I was happy and I felt smart. Now I feel unhappy and stupid.
Yeah, it's time to go back to making sausage.
But Peasy, I did notice one thing. He uses old pictures like we do.
Oh yeah.
What do you say?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
His
When
book
I
has
was
no
around,
pictures on the front.
this young orangutan.
Hey, Dr. Stephen, just before we even get started, I know you're a joyful, happy person. And thank you for coming on here, because this is not, our show is kind of eclectic, and you're one of the smartest people we've had on the show. So we want to thank you for being here. But I want to just, before we even get started, you have this huge body of work. You went through this whole entire, I guess, sequence of life from A to Z. And the most impressive thing to me was, and Mike, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but in his book, he talked about having a dream with an angel when he was young, which set him off on a path that he is today. And I would love to let you tell us more about that. This is fascinating.
Okay, I'll keep it pretty brief because it's a long story.
Yes,
but
we have an hour, Doc. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Well, I went up to a high school. I was born on Long Island, actually, in Babylon, not Mesopotamia, but the one on the South Shore here. And I went up to a high school in New Hampshire, in Concord, New Hampshire, and it was an Episcopal school, and we all studied a lot of things. But I really liked the world's religious traditions attracted me, and I used to read a lot of these things on the pathways. And one morning I had a dream. I was 15 years old, and it was sort of when I was not quite awake but not quite asleep. And I saw a road that was headed to the west. It was very foggy. I couldn't see more than a few feet. And in the corner of my eye, I saw the profile of a young man with stringy, dirty blonde hair who seemed like he was about to jump. And just as I saw him, then appeared the face of this beautiful woman in an angelic impression. And she said to me, "If you save him, you too shall live." And then all the fog departed, and it was an open highway, and I walked to the west. And that was the end of it. And I would tell my buddies about it. It was a boys' school, St. Paul's up in New Hampshire, and I would tell my friends about it, and they thought it was a little crazy, but they were amused. And the thing is that it recurred 6 times over the course of a year. And my school teacher there, Rod Wells, who was an Episcopal minister, even took me down to Yale Div School to give a talk in a class on adolescent spirituality. It was just something that formed my life. I didn't know if it was just complete craziness, if I had just somehow invented this entirely, or maybe it had some subtle meaning, and you never can quite tell. So I didn't know that for a long time, but eventually I found out. And
now,
I mean, I can tell you how I found out.
Mike, did you have a repetitive dream? I had, as a kid, I had many repetitive dreams over and over and over again, and I don't know what they meant, but it wasn't as positive as his. But I had like scary dreams and monster dreams or whatever. Did you have repetitive dreams like that you thought were meaningful to you?
No, what I'm thinking about right now is this guy's so smart. Even his jokes are smart. He says from Babylon, Long Island, not Babylon, Mesopotamia.
I'm still stuck
there.
It's clever. It's clever. What is smart?
No,
clever.
I used to have a dream when I was younger. I had it for like 6 months straight. That every day I was walking, and I was walking with my mother and father, and all of a sudden they disappeared, and I was alone. And then all of a sudden I walked up the edge of a cliff, and every time I walked off the cliff, I would wake up. So it was like some weird thing for like 6 months. No, I don't know.
But you never really walked off of a cliff or anything like that. And see now,
I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
His dream has this great story.
So what happened was, so I'm 17 years old, and I'm supposed to go down to college in Philadelphia, and I'm at home, and I got a job in the Bronx tutoring, which I really like to do. I used to tutor French Canadian kids up in New Hampshire, and whoop, that was the phone. Sorry about that.
All right.
Anyway, life ain't perfect. So
we're very casual. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
We're so casual, Stephen. I'm going to ask you to move to the middle a little bit. How's that?
Okay, good.
Because you're a little off center. That's
okay. Good.
It's perfect.
Yeah. So my mother freaked out and she said, "You can't do that. It's too dangerous." And my father agreed with her. So we had this argument for 2 or 3 days, and my dad was the president of a furniture store on Fifth Avenue called W&J Sloan's that went out of business a long time ago.
Wow.
And he knew all the manufacturers around New York. And so my mother said, "Look, if you insist on doing this, I'm not going to cover you for college." And I said, "Finally, okay, Mom, I won't take this job, but Dad, what am I going to do?" And my dad said, "I got just the job for you. You can work at Bill DeBono's lampshade factory in Patchogue." So I was like, with my copy of Siddhartha in my pocket, and so I drove his secondhand gray Mercedes 190, which has seen a hell of a lot better days, to Patchogue for 2 weeks. And I worked in a factory with a lot of big, huge, I'll say this, Italian women, typically smoking heavily. And I say that with great respect and affection. And after 2 weeks, I said, "This is it." So I drove that car out to West Hampton Beach. And I had a friend out there, Libby Sutro, and then a gal friend named Lee. And about 11 that Friday night, I said, I had a dream that pointed me to the West. And I'm having this difficulty at home. I hate this job. So I'm going to just drive west. And I said goodbye. I had $50. I had my classical guitar. I had a few books with me. And I drove the Sunrise Highway. I drove through the Midtown Tunnel. I went uptown. I drove across to the George Washington Bridge for the first time ever. All I knew I was going west. And when I got over the bridge, there were 2 signs. One was 95 South, but I wasn't going south. The other one was Route 80 West. So I went 80 West. And I got about 5 in the morning, I got to the Lewisburg, Pennsylvania exit. And this was an old car, an old Mercedes, and it had a generator. And when the generators broke on those things, all the power was completely gone. So the lights were out, it was dark, and I managed to get over on the shoulder. But the thing is that just as this happened, I was second guessing myself. And I thought, I'm going to do a U-turn over the Midway and get home, and my reputation will be intact. I had enough money for gas maybe to get back. And so somehow I thought this was a premonition. Maybe it was a sign that I had to keep going west. So this is the true story, and it's infamy in my family, because this is more of a confession in some ways. I took a piece of paper out of the glove compartment, and I wrote a note, and it said, "To the Pennsylvania State Police, please return this car to Henry A.V. Post, 44 Davison Lane East, West Islip, Long Island, 516-669-5666, from his son, Stephen, who no longer works in the lampshade factory." And that's the truth. And I took off. I got a ride with a big truck. And it's a long story, but I finally got out to San Francisco because I had a cousin named George Lamont who lived in the Mission District. He was a former Green Beret, and he was a supervisor in a building, and he was part of that culture there. And I spent the summer on his floor, and I played, Villalobos and Granados and stuff in Hispanic restaurants. And I drew a really bad draft number. So I called the people from Reed College, because I'd gotten in there, but I told them I wasn't going to go. And I said, "Look, that's in Portland, Oregon." I said, "I really need a place." And they gave it to me. And then, over the summer, I'd been going to a Nichiren Shoshu Buddhist temple, where they chant with beads, "Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo," which means like mystery and oneness and all that stuff. Some people call it a cult. I just think it was just straight Buddhism. And so early September, I met with my cousin and some of the friends from the temple, and they gave me a Gahon zone, which is important, which is a scroll. It's a Buddhist scroll, and it's got all these symbols on it, like, universal love, unlimited mind, all that stuff. And they said, if you take this, it'll give you luck for the rest of your life. But don't give it to anybody else, because then you'll be in bad shape. So I took off, I put it in my backpack, and I took the Market Street bus, and I got over to the Golden Gate Park. I walked across the park, and I walked up that rocky ledge stairway onto the left side of the bridge, headed north. And it was so foggy, I couldn't see more than 2 feet in front of my nose. I got to the middle of that big span. This is only one span. And I heard this ruffling noise on the left, and I squinted really hard, and I saw the face of a young kid who I thought looked a little bit anyway like the face I saw in the dream. I mean, with stringy blonde hair, and he was hanging out on a ledge. And I looked at him, and I could just about see him. And he said, he felt I was invading him. And I say, I truly hope you don't jump. And then he started screaming curses and everything you could imagine. And he said, you're in my way, And he said a lot of things. It was a long conversation. And I said, look, I want you to know something. I think I'm here for a reason. Somehow or another, and I'm not sure of this, I think I was guided all the way out here. I told him about the dream. I told him about stealing Dad's car, the note to the Pennsylvania police, everything under the sun. And he was fascinated by it. So then I said, look, if you step over the railing and come over here where I'm standing on the pedestrian side, I'm going to give you something that's going to change your life.
Oh boy!
I was a salesman. So I said, I'm going to give you a Gahon zone. And he said, what the hell is a Gahon zone? And I told him what it was, and I unscrolled it a little bit and explained some of the symbols. And then I said, if you come over here, I'll give this to you. So he actually stepped over, and he was calming down. I don't know if he was drugged up or not, but he was calming down. And I talked with him gently about the scroll, and I said, look, you take this and go to my cousin George Lamont's house at 16 Chenery Street. And here's a note. And I wrote a note to cousin George, which cousin George appreciated. And Harry took the note, and he walked down the bridge. He was heading south. And I went north, headed for Oregon. But as soon as we parted ways, suddenly all this heavy mist and fog just disappeared. And it was this incredibly bright blue sky. It was unbelievable. It was radiant. And it just somehow made me feel like I was living out that dream. And that's, anyway, I got to the bottom of the bridge, and I put my thumb out, and this old truck came along, a farmer. And he said, where are you going? I said, I'm going up to Portland, Oregon. He said, well, I can get you there. My name's Dwayne Dill, D-I-L-L, just like in dill pickle. And this here's my wife, Dorothy. So that's sort of episode one of like what I call the one mind, the universal mind. Somehow, like I had this dream, it was 2 years earlier, and it was 3,000 miles away. And I felt at that time that this somehow had all come true, and it was all part of my destiny.
This is
Mike. Before you go, Peasy, I got a couple of odd questions. The first question is, and you can answer it one at a time. Did your father get the car back?
He did. So, yeah. He got the car back. Okay, so when I was hitchhiking out west, I actually was on Route 80, and I was in a van full of hippie kids because I'd had to change from the truck to a van in Chicago. And one of the girls said to me, you should really call your mother. So I called my mom from just outside of Omaha, Nebraska. And I called Collect, of course. And my mom said, Stevie, thank God you're alive. And we can call off the Pinkertons, the detectives. And I said, Mom, why'd you call the Pinkertons? Didn't you get my note? Which really, I said, you should have let me do that tutoring. And she said, yeah, we realized that. And I said, did Dad get the car back? She said, yeah, it's in the shop. So he got the car back. But about a year later, when I actually saw him face to face, he didn't come to the door. My mother did. He was back in the TV room, and he was still a little rattled by it all.
And my second follow up to that is: do you realize if you gave the correct number that your parents' phone number ended in 666?
Yeah, I mean, it was 516-669-5655. I said
okay, good. Thing. Okay, you said 360, so I got nervous.
Yeah, no, it's not. No. It was 5. Yeah, I just screwed that up.
No
Sorry
problem.
about that. Nervous.
In Buddhism, that's very good. In Buddhism, it works. It's better.
Yeah, but now you gave away the scroll. So what happened to your luck? They said don't ever give it away.
Well, I wasn't supposed to, but I was doing something. I was taking a Buddhist spiritual risk to save this guy's life. And by the way, I didn't see him again because I only went back to George's at Thanksgiving. But this guy had apparently gotten it together, and he'd gone back home to North Carolina. And I've never seen him again, but I've heard a few things, and apparently he's living a good life. But I hitchhiked up to.
What you don't realize is on the scroll with the lotto numbers, the guy hit the lottery, and he has all your money now.
Oh, there it is. Oh, yeah. I hope he does because I don't have it. But yeah, so I was up at Reed. Yeah, but I was up at Reed College, and yeah, John.
Go ahead, no, because I'm hooked on the Buddhist thing. Go ahead.
Well, anyway, I went up to Reed, and that was the days of Steve Jobs, who went to school there, and I encountered him a bit, and we actually took a course called Alchemy 101. Which is sort of about quantum physics and science, and that explained the Mercedes thing to me, that somehow or another that Mercedes broke down just at the right time. It wasn't a sign for me to go back home. It was a sign for me to head forward. And so that January, it doesn't snow in Oregon, but it gets really rainy and slushy. And it was a cold January night, and I was in the coffee shop, and this guy came bounding in. And he had a black leather jacket on. He said, "My name's Andy. I've got a brand new Shovelhauser Harley Davidson, the fastest bike in the world. Who wants to go for a ride?" And I, like a fool, because I was a fool, I went out and I jumped on the back of this thing. And it's about 9 at night. And he took off through Portland. He went through every red light, every stop sign. He hit about 180. He went south on the Pacific Coast Highway. And he was screaming into the night air. I was freaking out. I thought I was dead. I honestly was tearing up. I thought I was dead. And then he did this amazing U-turn like Evel Knievel over the Midway. He headed back, hit 180 again, and he dropped me off exactly where he picked me up. And I staggered across the bridge to my dormitory. I was in Ackerman dormitory. And just as I crossed the threshold, lo and behold, the phone on the wall rang, and I never picked that up because my parents never knew where I was or what I was up to. And I just felt pushed to pick it up. I can't explain it. It was just an energy. I didn't see anything, but I just somehow felt I should pick this up. I picked it up. I said hello, and it was my mother in New York. And she said, "I just woke up. I had this terrible premonition. I was sweating, and I had this fear. I thought you were dead." And I said, "Mom, I thought I was dead too." And then we had a really beautiful conversation, a real mother-son conversation. And again, I realized, hey, my mother's 3,000 miles away, and she has this intuition that I'm in trouble. How does that happen? And, for me, the explanation is that our minds are not just cells and brain and tissue, but there's something very mysterious about our minds. Emerson called it an oversoul, but there's something about the mind and our connectedness that is really not well understood.
Yeah, we just got into that with Michelle Welch the other day. We were talking about mother's intuition, and I said there's definitely some kind of connection, especially with a mother and her child, because the child comes from her. So I always think there's some kind of metaphysical somewhere, because mothers always have that sense. And like I said, I gave the example, just like you just said, your mother woke up and had this bad feeling, okay? And just as other mothers have, and their nightmares come true, the police ring the doorbell, your daughter's son's in an accident, or it's something like they know bad something happened, or just your mother looking at you as a child or even as an adult, knowing exactly what you were thinking, what you were feeling, if something was wrong, if you weren't right. They just knew, and it wasn't, we always made like an Italian mother thing, right? But it's every mother.
It's every
Yeah, it's just I believe in that 100%.
Yeah, and there's a
Everyone
scientist named Sheldrake who studies that and calls it morphic fields of connectivity, which is kind of interesting. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Morphic field.
It's funny you mention that because I believe, and this is my own personal belief, but I believe there's an invisible stream of consciousness that's around us all that we could pull in and out of and dip in and out of anytime we want. I come up with ideas about something I want to do, and suddenly sometimes like I'll think about it and I say, I'm going to take this idea and use it. And maybe I forget and I don't. And then I see somebody 3 months later doing it. I think I had that opportunity. It was right in front of me. I grabbed it and I didn't continue. So I think it's the same thing with that morphogenic field, because it's the same way the moms may be connected or people are connected. There's an invisibleness that travels through each of us that we all can connect to more or less dependent upon how conscious we are, I believe.
Yeah. Well, I believe in something very much like that. I believe that mind before matter. I don't think mind is just a derivative from matter, because a lot of philosophers of mind don't believe that's possible. So, these spiritual traditions have said mind before matter, not matter before mind, but mind before matter. And if that's true, then everything somehow is connected with this universal mind, whether you're a Hindu or a Buddhist or whatever your tradition might be. And I think that's really kind of the heart of premonition. I mean, you talk about creative intuitions. People have these amazing insights that they can't explain. They just feel invaded by them sometimes. And it's very powerful. It's very powerful. So I agree.
Hey, Stephen, do you know why Buddhists don't vacuum underneath the couch?
Oh, no. Why?
No attachment.
Oh, okay. So, okay, I love that. I'm going to write that down. Do you know what the Zen Buddhist said to the hot dog vendor?
I want one with everything.
Yeah, make me one with everything.
Yeah.
But then he gave the hot dog vendor a $20 bill, and he didn't get any change. So he said, "Where's my change?" And the hot dog vendor said, "Change comes from within."
Within. Yeah, that's right. I love all those stories. I love those jokes. Hey, let me ask you this. This is interesting too. You actually, at 17 years old, decided to just get up and leave and go across the country because you had a dream 2 years earlier. That talk about the chutzpah to get up and say, and you just lived by you actually lived by your internal feelings as opposed to intellect at that moment. Now you're a person that teaches intellect, if you will. You're writing books, you're doing lectures, this is all about intellectual stuff. But at the time, it seems like you're an emotional person just doing whatever you felt was right. That takes a lot of chutzpah.
Well, there was a push. The pull was the dream and the intuition that maybe the dream was telling me something. But the push was this incredible argument I was having with my parents. And the fact that, I just didn't think I needed to go to college. I mean, if there's one mind, you kind of have it all available to you, like you're explaining. So why invest a lot? But I went west, but I've always told people that I never planned my life. I mean, it's true, I've done a few things of note, but I've never planned my life. I don't claim like I made my life. I think that would be really arrogant. Mostly, I believe in the journey idea that you're on this journey, and your destiny is more important than your goals and your plans. But you have to be open to surprises, and you have to respond to the people that somehow the universe throws into your path. And that's mostly what I've done. So it's true. I've had an academic life, but it's been much more than that.
But do you believe that you had this happen to you so you could be drawn to these experiences to help others, like this, which it sounds like? Or do you believe you had an experience that you then in turn created in your life? There's like that chicken or an egg in that question. Which way do you think it was for you?
That's really a great question.
It is.
And I mean, I'm perfectly willing to acknowledge that human beings, because look, I mean, there's a lot of emptiness in life. There's a lot of desperate detours in growing up, especially for adolescents, but for everybody. And so we're kind of always inventing meaning. We're trying to create meaning because it's awfully hard to get along without it. So I acknowledge, John, that we create things. And I thought, before I met that Harry on the bridge, I thought that this could have been entirely my own concoction. It just, who knows? But when I was out there and I met him on the bridge at that moment, because it was so resonant with the dream, I had a feeling that there was some objectivity in that experience. It wasn't just my own creativity. There was something to it that I didn't understand, but that I wanted to follow. And so what the angel said was, if you save him, you too shall live. I did adopt that. Now, is that me just making it up as I go? 50-50. But for me, intuitively, all my life, it's been more than that. It's been a message, and I've tried to live by it. I've taught in medical schools, Chicago, Case Western, all over. And I've always worked to be helpful to medical students, to consult with patients on difficult decisions. I've always tried to do that. And then I ran into Sir John Templeton, believe it or not, in a restaurant in outside of Dulles Airport in Washington. And we started talking in the lobby. He was the investor, the Templeton funds. We started talking about agape love and spirituality and non-materialism. And we just hit it off so good. So I'm sitting in my office at Case Western, X years later, about 10 years after I met him. And he sent me a fax from Nassau, from Lyford Key. He didn't email. He thought it was just not worthwhile, but he loved the fax machine, And he said, why don't we start an institute to study the greatest asset in human experience, which is love? And I faxed back, Sir John, great idea. He said, and then he faxed back, we'll bring all the best science we can to it. And I said, fantastic. And then I said in that fax, what should we call it? He said, the Institute for Research on Unlimited Love. And there I am in a medical school, and I got all these geneticists down the hallway. And I mean, I was thinking, oh my God, this is going to be tough. So I faxed back, maybe we should call it the Institute for Creative Altruism, because altruism is a really dry, sciencey term. And he faxed back, no, Stephen, I think unlimited love up to $8.9 million. And I faxed back, Mike, just what you would have done. I faxed back, Sir John, I love that language. It jumps right off the page. And we're in business, and we've been going on for 20 years. I got a board meeting in Cleveland next week, and we've funded studies all over the world, not just on, and Sir John would always say this, not just human love, but the love that made humans, the love that sometimes you just can't explain, but it doesn't feel like it comes from you. It sort of comes at you, and or maybe it's some incredible meeting that you have that's just too good to be chance, the perfect person, the perfect place, the perfect time. And that's, some people call that synchronicity, but somehow it feels like it's too caused and perfect just to be, meaningless.
Yeah. So what? Is a very successful, wealthy person I know. I can't mention the name because I promised I would never say it, but he told me a story. I had a chance to sit with him for a while. We were at an event or something. We met and we hit it off. And I started asking about his successes, his failures, and a lot of questions about business and life in general, because I had a lot of respect for him. And I said to him, what is your most successful thing that you've created, you've experienced, or in your life? And I thought he was going to say, this business, or buying this business, or buying this for this much. And he turned to me and he said, there was one point in my life that I impacted someone's life where this person was going to kill themselves, and they didn't do it because I happened to run into them at the time. And they write me every year thanking me. They send me a letter every year, a card thanking them, because now they have children and a family and life, and they're happy. And so that was like the most important thing to him. So he said, you could make all the money in the world, have the most successful, but when you leave this earth, if you just impacted one life, you're successful. So that's what he said.
Amen. John, what do you think
I
of
like
that?
to pack a few people away, actually. Maybe you want to save me from killing a few people.
Yeah.
One of the things that's interesting about your
go
book,
ahead,
Stephen, what I really enjoyed the most was there's there's many passages and quotes from tremendous sages over the time. The one that impressed me the most, which I read, and I remember I said, this is great, I never heard it before, was from the Buddha, and it was, if you truly love yourself, you can never hurt another. I thought, wow, I thought about that a long, long time when I read that. I mean, I stopped reading your book to really, contemplate that. But this book is filled with many prose like that, and it's one of my favorite books. Actually, my favorite book of all time is Khalil Gibran, the Prophet. Was my favorite book of all time. I give it away as gifts to people during the holidays. And when I read this book, it kind of reminded me of that on some level. I know you did have a couple quotes in there from Gibran
From
as
Khalil,
well.
from the Prophet, was just unbelievable. He was.
Am I saying the name wrong? It's Khalil.
Yeah, well, I say Khalil, but you hear it's pronounced very differently. But what you're saying, if I love myself, I can't hurt another person. And I think but remember some years ago, I think it was like 14 years ago, there was a guy in Midtown Manhattan, and he jumped off the subway platform to cover the body of someone who had a seizure and fallen onto the ground by the tracks. He'd never met this guy before, and the person up on the platform was African American, and the guy who'd fallen was in a fancy coat and was a stockbroker, it turned out. But this guy left his two little girls, 5 and 7 years old, on the platform. I mean, think about that. And how were they shocked? And he jumped off the edge and he covered this guy's body. Everybody assumed he was dead. And unbelievably, they were in a little ravine and the subway ran over them and they both got out of it. And this was in the New York Times. Wow. And you think about something like this. I mean, they asked this guy, his name was Wellesley. They asked him, why did he do that? And he said, well, I was in the Navy. In the Navy, that's what we do. But from your point of view, John, he was putting himself at great risk, but he was also fulfilling himself, because from a Buddhist point of view, there isn't like so much a divide between me and you. It's more I and I. I mean, I'm wrapped up with your consciousness and you're wrapped up with my consciousness. So maybe that explains it in part,
There's another issue too. I remember reading in one of the Zen books. It said there's this simple story. There was a Buddhist monk. I think it was a Buddhist monk sitting next to a waterfall, and with a student teaching him, and he said to him, there was a little spider crawling around the waterfall, and it fell in, and the Buddhist monk picked him up, the spider, and it bit him, and he threw him back down. And the spider started crawling and then again fell in, and he went and picked him up again. And then the student says, hey, what are you doing? I mean, he bit you the first time. Why would you do it the second time? And I think the story was, or the answer was, because it's, as a human, it's my driving force to save rather than worry about myself. And I think that's exactly what you're expressing there just a few moments ago.
Yeah. And so it's not like, counting reciprocal gains or tit for tat. It's just what they call, everybody knows this, just pay it forward. And so I've written an article about widows and widowers and how they did better with grief and bereavement if they were spending time helping other people in the neighborhood or in their communities or whatever. And it was a pretty substantial finding. So there's a society in New York, of widows and widowers, and they were having a meeting at that Marriott Hotel in the middle of downtown, like near 50th Street or something like that. And so I went in there and I gave a speech. I gave their plenary address. And I said, the best thing you can do, everybody, there were about 300 people, 400 people, I said, is just get your mind off your loss, the self, and the problems of the self, and focus on helping others. So there was this guy in the back of the ballroom, and he started raising his hand, and actually he even yelled out. He said, "Listen to me." He said, "I don't believe a word you say, buddy. I don't do nothing for nothing." And
You sure it wasn't me?
Sounds like you. I was going to say that, Mike.
I don't know. And so sometimes people, they get under this idea that, well, if you don't have a clear payback, if I'm not, getting my payback, then there's no benefit to me. Well, all the benefits were internal, because what we've shown, I've written hundreds of articles on this in good medical journals, is that people feel more resilient, they feel happier, they feel less stressed if they can just take their minds and focus on others and meet their needs and feel that gratification. So it's not that they're getting a payback, but it's that internally they're feeling this deep sense of meaning and purpose. And so that's what that's a very Buddhist idea.
I'm amazed at how this. Sausage, have you had anything in your life that's drawn you to go actually listen to your internals to help others? Like you had to go help somebody else?
I
He's
like
like,
to
no.
help. No, I'm like helpful by nature. So, like, some people may say like you're a nosy body, but I'm not. Like if I see something with somebody, even in business or in life, and I think like I could add something, I'll give my opinion, even though if it's not wanted a lot, So I actually dated a girl, and she said, "Why are you always trying to fix everything and everybody? You're always trying to," she was like getting aggravated by it, And I said, it's not bad intention. It's not condescending. It's just that, I apply what I've learned, and I try to help other people to get better or to advance their life. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I'm like that by nature. So,
In the
I'm
end,
always like,
we're all here to serve. What could you really get anyway? What could you really
no,
get?
I think
you get
how
great
much satisfaction.
How many cars? Yeah, well, the satisfaction from helping others. I'm saying personally, how much can you really take? I mean, after you have a big house and you got cars and you got kids and you got families, you got this, how much more stuff do you want? It's the same but bigger.
I like stuff. I
You.
like nice things. I like nice things. I like stuff.
I do too. I'm getting rid of lots of stuff. I'm reducing. I'm reducing.
I tell you, my life changed with my firstborn. So as soon as I had a kid, my whole brain did a 180. Everything just changed. From thoughts of dying. I never worried about dying. Now I'm worried about dying, right? Loving something instantly. I never did that. I grew up, with parents, you love them, but when your daughter or son comes out, you love that
Totally
thing instantly.
different. Absolutely.
Right? So it's like, so now you're worried about being around, take care of them, making sure you're going to live a long life. What are you going to do now if you're not around? The kids have no father. There's a lot of stuff. I never worried about before. So,
hey, Mike, I got to tell you a story. So, my wife and I, we have 2 kids. They're adult now. But when my first child was born, a daughter, this was in Chicago. I was at the University of Chicago at the time. And so that fall, we drove all the way back to New York. And my sister, my older sister, happened to be home, and she observed me. She noticed my behavior, and you know what she said to me? This again, it's a confession. She said, "You know what, Stevie? I never really liked you until you became a father." And I thought it was the greatest compliment that I ever received. I mean, it's actually only one of 3 I ever got from her in my life, but it was a beautiful compliment because she was saying, Mikey, that, just like you're describing, somehow I had changed inwardly, that somehow helping to bring that life into the world had completely changed me. And I think most men do feel that way.
well, I think if you're a good father, you feel that way. I think there's some people that are not affected by it at all. I think that with that child, you take all your selfishness and you roll into a little ball and just throw it away, because it's not about you anymore. Okay, it's not about you. It's just crazy because I tell people, well, we're gonna have a baby. I say, well, are you ready to be selfless? Because that's what you're gonna be.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just certain things like it's just like you say, you know, your baby's sick or got a cold or you know, and they're suffering, and then you say, well, why don't you just give that cold to me? Leave the kid alone. You know, they don't understand. I can handle that cold. I can handle that sickness. You know, like you don't want them to have any kind of like bad things happen to them. And you know, so I think if you're a good person, a good father, I think that's what you feel. I've known people that just don't care about the kids and still live their selfish life. So you know, I just
You know,
You're a
it's
good
like
man.
it sounds like we're all Buddhist at this moment. Stephen's like talking to your priest. It's like we're unloading all our stuff. It's
Oh,
like,
I love these conversations. You know, I love these.
I mean,
That's why I like.
I think I met some Vietnamese. I think that a lot of Vietnamese are Buddhists, right? Am I right?
Yes.
Is that big?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they believe, I guess, in reincarnation. Am I correct?
Yes.
And do they believe you, depending how you live your life, is what you come back as in your next?
Yeah, that's
Am I
pretty much
wrong?
it.
Okay.
That's
So,
right.
like, when you see ants and cockroaches and stuff, those are people that didn't really live a good life before, right?
That's right. An ant or a
they're on the
cockroach.
Jersey Housewives.
Yeah, that's right.
No, I'm just
Or
thinking
an
about it because
aardvark.
that's yeah. They believe in karma, which I'm a very big fan of. They believe in reincarnation, which I don't really know. I mean, you know, I don't have one feeling one way or another about it. And what you come back in your next life, that's very interesting to me.
Yeah. I'm
You
not
must
sure I
you must have
believe
scalped somebody in your previous life.
it.
And what did I do? I probably starved to death. That's why I'm eating too much right now.
Yeah.
Hey, let me
So,
let me just
take it
real
take it
quick.
easy there, Guy Fieri. Take it easy.
You know I love you, Mike. One of the things I was looking at when I was reading his book, that's an interesting thing about Stephen also is, can you just tell us real briefly about how it is that you help people as caregivers with Alzheimer's disease? That book you wrote, Dignity for Deeply Forgetful People, and how do you help
That fits.
people transition
That
into
fits right
this?
in with me. My mother has dementia, so
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
we have a lot of experience, and what we did learn through all these years is that dementia is tough on the person that has it, but it's 10 times tougher on the people that take care of them, and especially like my sister takes care of my mother like a queen, and I could see it affects her. It's hard. It's not easy.
Yeah. It's very hard. It's a 36-hour day, you know, and there's a lot to it. But so I for about 30 years, my grandmother passed away of what was probably Alzheimer's disease, and I had some interactions with her when I was uh, much younger, and I was convinced that even though there were times, Mikey, when I thought, okay, she's gone, she's a husk, she's a shell, she's not there. There were these moments when she had lucidity. You know, she knew who she was. She could communicate, and so I actually started calling that something called paradoxical lucidity, and I've even written papers about it. But the language of dementia is one that I kind of put aside as much as I can because it's really just a concept of decline from a former mental state. But a deeply forgetful person. You know, we're all pretty deeply forgetful at certain points. You know, I forget where I parked my car. And there was even one time when I asked a medical student if they knew if I drove to work today. That's really bad.
Wow, you make me feel better because I'm getting real nervous. I'm starting to forget what things are called and recalling words and like I'm starting to get nervous. Like so my mother has dementia and I'm starting to forget like simple words or what this is called or even it's like strange. But doctor said that's just life. I mean, just everything that's going on because I have a brain that's so busy that he said that you're in overdrive. And what
Well,
you
that's
called
true.
what you call with your grandmother having those moments, I call them MOCs, moments of clarity, because that's what my
Moments
mother
of
used to
clarity.
have once in a while. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
used to
and
call.
it's
I said,
really
I would say it was like my own lingo with my sister. I said, "Oh, mom had an MOC today." She talked about something,
Wow.
and then she would like disappear.
yeah. So there's a chapter on music and creative arts and how you can how people can be very demented, but they still have they may not be able to think in a linear way, like from point A to point B, but they have what I call in the book symbolic rationality. They still know that somehow their identity over the course of a lifetime is wrapped up with this cowboy hat that they used to wear in the steel mills on the west side of the Cuyahoga River. That's a Clevelanders world, and so that's
Lyrics from music was the
yes.
last thing to go. Last thing to go with my mother. Lyrics from Tom Jones, from Paul Anka, Sinatra, all these things that she loved. She could not know who you are, but she would know every friggin' word of a song. It's the craziest thing.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? And so, but even very deep in, I mean, until you get to the really final stages of this, people will surprise you. They'll respond to personalized music. I want to hold your hand, or whatever it might be. For your generation, my generation,
Correct. Right.
and then afterwards, they're actually able to hold some degree of conversation, not for a long time, maybe for a minute or two, and then our studies show that over the course of the rest of the day, they're calmer, they're more tranquil. So the world isn't just coming at them and threatening them because they can't understand it, but they actually are in a more internal place and they can manage
Stephen,
better.
is that physical or spiritual? Is that a spiritual body leaving, or is that a physical decay of the body not attending to the spiritual?
Yeah. So, John, that is the $1 million question. Now, a lot of my neuroscience buddies, they're going to say, it's just some little leftover remnant of the brain that's still firing. But how could you have this moment of lucidity, that Mikey's describing? I mean, it's bigger than that. So my own personal bias is that underlying all of this silence and all this chaos and all of this sense of loss, there is still a full being there. And in the book, I have a chapter called "Is Grandma Still There?" Question mark. And I've never wanted to say to a grandchild, "Hey, she's gone. She's absent. She's a husk. I mean, come on. We don't know that. We have to be agnostic about it. And so, my personal sense is that there is a lot more there than meets the eye. And is there an eternal soul? I do believe in that. And so maybe what they've done is they've just gone down to, say, Grand Central Station, and they've already got one foot on that train bound for glory.
Right.
So they're a step ahead of us.
But that's the old age question, I guess. Is consciousness physical or invisible? Is it outside of you or is it inside of you? Is it a combination of? Because I think a lot of people think that we're physical beings and the brain processes everything and it's gone. And meanwhile, I think it's outside of you and it's attached during your physicalness and then cut off, if you will.
But dimensions are different things. So like my biggest fear, and which I've kind of formed a hypothesis as my mom became nonverbal totally, really doesn't move as much anymore. It's really declining. But for some reason, if we're having a conversation amongst ourselves that's about my mother, I'll give you a perfect example. So the doctor came to see her, and the doctor made a suggestion about maybe it's time that maybe you guys aren't able to take care of her in the house or something. And I said, well, look, and my mother looked at this person like she wanted to kill him. Like that this guy was making a statement like that. Like I could tell when my mother looks at me, I could tell what she wants. It's the weirdest thing. And so like I'm saying, this is very bad because imagine being trapped and you know what's going on, but you can't verbally talk about it or react to it. It's got to be
are they trapped?
I don't know.
Are they trapped?
Who knows that? Who knows?
Well, this reminds me of Robin Williams and Awakenings. People who were in that
Yes,
locked in state,
great
and
movie.
yeah, and Oliver Sacks wrote that. But they gave them the medication, and they came back into it. They came back into themselves. They were social. Of course, the dopamine didn't hold on for a while, forever, and so they went back into their conditions. But for a while, it was like, Robert De Niro. He's home. Leonard. He's back. He wants to
Right.
go out on the street.
Yeah.
So I don't think you can deny that that's a possibility in any
Yeah,
of
because
these
they said that they knew what was going on when they were out. They
Yeah.
they they.
Oh, yeah.
I'm telling you, when this guy
Yeah.
suggested my mother be anywhere but her house, she was throwing daggers at this guy. She was giving him a side eye, and my mother's feisty, so like I was laughing. I said, she wants to kill you, Doc. He's like, what are you talking about? You're like, he's thinking very scientifically. I'm saying my mother's pissed off right now. I could tell.
Yeah.
And it's like we were laughing, and still happens to this day. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was at the Times Center. I guess it's on 40th Street or something like that, doing a talk for the Alzheimer's Association like 7 years ago. And I was with this. I was sharing the stage with this woman who'd written a book as a caregiver. And after I went home, I got an email from her, and she said, my mother hasn't spoken for several months, and I just assumed she wasn't capable. And then all of a sudden, she blurted out. She was a physicist. She blurted out, "God, energy in the universe." So how do you explain that? I mean, where's that coming from? And I don't think anybody.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
you can't answer that too, because now, so my father passed away in January, and we've noticed that my mother has not been the same since then. It's almost like she knows. So we believe a lot in this, and even the doctors, they say, you're just seeing things, or you're hopeful, or you're wishing that's it, or no, it's not what I'm telling you. That's what it is.
Because
Nobody knows their people like you. So I just know
you're closest. You're the closest. You're the one
Yeah.
who's the noticing. You're noticing.
Yeah,
You're not
she's declining since my dad's gone, and you notice that a lot. You see it a lot. I remember my grandfather died. 2-3 years later, my grandmother died. Like especially the older people, that were married for a long time. They don't last very long, usually without their partner. Usually they go pretty quickly after.
But Jen, so now there's a whole scientific literature, and again, it's called paradoxical lucidity. And the National Institute on Health actually put out a grant request for the study of paradoxical lucidity. How is it that you notice these things? How is it that if you're close enough to these people, you can pick up on things, and it's very intuitive? And it turns out, there's more there than meets the eye. So what does that teach us about the very nature of Alzheimer's and some of these other conditions? So they actually put out a big grant, and now you see articles in the neurology journals. I think it's very important.
I agree.
I mean,
I agree.
It's hard to be a
I've
good
trained.
caregiver
Yeah.
otherwise.
Yeah, I agree. I have people that maybe their parents were just diagnosed, or I said, listen, it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse unless they get, further along, trying to cure these things and treat them better. There's a way to delay a lot of the stuff that's going to happen. There's some medication that's working and stuff. So we give them advice on that. But I say to them, always talk to them and always let them know what's going on, because I believe they know. So like we still tell my mother, Mom, we know you're not feeling good. We got the medication coming, blah, blah, blah. Do hang in there or this or that. We talk to her like normal. She doesn't answer you, but we let her know what's going on if we have to tell her something.
That's
rough.
rough.
She understands.
Really rough.
Yeah, it's hard. Not easy.
This book
Very
is
rough.
dedicated to a neurologist I knew at Case, Joe Foley, a very well-known neurologist. And there's a story about how he walked into a room with a woman who everybody assumed was completely gone. And he just got down, like you're describing, at her level, and he asked her, "Mrs. Jacobson, is there anything I can do to make your day a little easier?" And then shockingly, she said, "I'd really like some iced tea."
Wow.
So Dr.
That's
Foley, who was the head of the American Neurological Society and everything, he went out into the hallways and he managed to come up with an iced tea with lemon, and he brought it in. I mean, you call them by name, you assume that there's more there than meets the eye, and then you have to be open to surprises. Hope is being open to surprises, and the surprises will come, but you got to be looking for them.
Unfortunately, a lot of these neurologists are really closed-minded, and they don't, like, I know there was, and I can't keep getting into this, there's some times that my mother had something going on with the lungs, and they would give her a little steroid, little prednisone, right? And she was still verbal, but whenever they gave this prednisone, her vocabulary tripled. It tripled. So when they get on this prednisone, she'd become more lucid, more energetic, more like herself, and be able to talk about a lot more things. And then when she would get weaned off it,
anti-inflammatory, it reduces
correct.
inflammation? Yeah.
Correct. So I said to the doctor, maybe she's got encephalitis, a little water in the brain. Maybe it's shrinking some of that water, shrinking some of that pressure off her. And they do look into it a little bit. They do these little shunts they put in there, or at least water. I think a lot of dementia and Alzheimer's, in my personal opinion, is cerebral fluid, is spinal fluid.
That's just from your experience.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Dr.
And
Sauce.
inflammation. Yeah, related to inflammation, and that's what happens. So, like,
correct.
If you go back 12 or 15 years ago, there were only 2 or 3 neurologists in America who would agree that stress, anxiety, and those kinds of things are at least partly related to the onset of dementia. Now, everybody believes that. I mean, I went to a conference at Berkeley, and 15 of the leading neurologists in America all agreed. Of course, there's genetics and there's lots of other things, but anxiety is one of them. And why is it? Because it's putting a lot of pressure on us. It's building up stress. And many people now think that actually Alzheimer's is caused by brain inflammation, just like you're describing, that the other stuff, the plaques and the tangles that you read about, they're just way downstream.
All that stuff.
Yeah, that's down the river. What's really happening is you're getting these inflammations, and it's because partly the times we live in, we're under so much stress. We're constantly trying to get from point A to point C. We can never kind of sit back and relax. There are a lot of good studies now on meditation, some of them coming out of Duke, on that meditation can help prevent Alzheimer's. And there's one that came out of Rush Presbyterian Hospital 4 or 5 years ago, a famous one. And it said that, older adults, get this, who have a sense of purpose, who, have something they want to live for that's meaningful to them, they tend to be memory protected.
There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
What are you saying? That your mother doesn't have anything to live for right now?
No, the quite opposite. My mother has dementia 15 years. Okay.
Yeah.
And only till the last couple of years, she fell. And after she fell, she kind of declined. But I believe she didn't fall. Like even older aunts that lived alone and had nobody to talk to, they seem to decline faster than the people that live with a big family. So, I mean, just from noticing things.
They have antibodies.
And I tell everybody to live their life like that. They said, well, what's the key to a happy life? I said, always having something to look forward to. Okay? Yes. Always have some, whether it's a vacation for 3 days. I said, you got to do something to look forward to, not the mundane everyday life.
So I love you guys because I really believe in mirth and hilaritas. And even when you're talking about a difficult topic, I have a lot of jokes about dementia. So
so does John Peasy.
So do I have three in my head right now.
So there was this couple, Henry and Molly. Okay, so Henry and Molly, they're like in their late 70s, and they're forgetting a lot of things, and they go to the doctor, the neurologist, and he gives them a mini mental test. He says, "You don't have dementia. You just got a little normal age-related forgetfulness. You're getting a little squirrely. But let me give you a suggestion. Take a pad of paper, keep it in your pockets, and when you got to do something, write it down so you don't forget about it, And so they're getting along pretty well. And then it's midnight and they're in bed. And Molly, she wakes up old Henry. She says, Henry, go down to the kitchen and make me an ice cream sundae with vanilla ice cream. And Henry says, Molly, I got it right here. She said, write it down. Don't need to. Chocolate syrup. Write it down. Don't need to. And a cherry on top. Write it down. Don't need to. So Henry goes down to the kitchen and you hear a whole lot of pan clanking. And after about 20 minutes, he calls up Molly and she goes down. And there he is. You got 2 fried eggs over hard. You got hashed brown potatoes. And Molly, she looks at Henry and she says, Henry, what's this? You forgot the toast. I could get slapped.
I heard it a little bit differently, but it's a very good joke. I got to tell you 2 of them too. Maybe you have the quickest one is, what's the best part about Alzheimer's? You could hide your own Easter eggs.
Yes,
No,
that's what you told me. He
An
said
old-
that. That's a good thing about your mother having dementia.
Yeah, and a little edgier one was a guy goes to the doctor and says, hey, doc, you got to tell me, you got to help me out. He goes, I'm not sure if my wife has like dementia or Alzheimer's or if she has like TB. And the doctor goes, listen, go home, chase her around the bed. If she coughs, you could screw her.
So,
Actually, if she coughs, don't screw her. It should be the opposite. Hey, listen, Doc, you've been a pleasure. You really are a really nice person to talk to, and the kind of guy we would just probably go out and have coffee with and have a good time. But tell us more about where we could get this book, because we want to get some sales and tell people how great this book really is that you have here, especially this one. I love this one.
well, it's on Amazon, it's just Stephen G. Post, God and Love on Route 80, The Hidden Mystery of Human Connectedness. Larry Dossey wrote a foreword to it. He wrote a book called One Mind. He's a really famous guy, and he loved it. And he loved the section on dementia because he also thinks, like Mikey's talking, that there's a lot more mystery there than we understand. And that's the dignity point, that the dignity is there and it's never gone. And we don't want to humiliate these people. So that's it.
Correct.
Just go to Amazon and enjoy it. And it's a journey book, and it's full of pictures too.
I have it. I love this book. I have it, and I loved it. And we could get you at stephengpost.com. If people go right on there and order off the website and see if you have anything upcoming or new things that you're coming out with. And you know what I really appreciate even more so is that you're an easy, no heavy lifting type guy. You're able to come on the show, and we could talk about a serious subject like dementia and still laugh about it, because humor is just as important as it is trying to heal people that have an issue, and I appreciate that.
That's why what you folks do is so important, because as I said, a lot of people have tremendous burdens. You don't know it, but if you could look into their minds, they have tremendous burdens, and they can't reframe their situation. They can't get to that point that Mikey's talking about when they can see a path to a brighter future. So, hilarity and mirth, tasteful, uplifting, ideally, is really important, because in a millisecond, just immediately, they're turned around. They can re-envision their lives. They're freed. It's the most liberating thing in the world. And even when you come to something really serious and heavy like Alzheimer's, which is serious, we're not being light about it, but if you have to be able to mix it, because we're human beings, and we need the light of humor. We need that light. We need to laugh.
And on that note, I appreciate that so much. Yeah, but no, because everyone's out trying to cancel everything today. What's right? What's wrong? It's this. It's bad. It's bad. The bottom line, you're right. Laughter is life. Without it, it's worthless. What if we can't laugh? You've been such a delight to be here, and I hope to have you come back, and we could deep dive into something a little more in depth later on, and in the future, if you will. Appreciate you coming. It's really been great.
Be in touch anytime.
Thank you,
you guys
Stephen.
are fabulous. Yeah,
You're a pleasure.
Okay.
We want to thank our producer, Leland Best, for getting everything nice and clean, going right. We call him God in the wings. We also want to thank John Galasso, who also has a wonderful book out that actually I'm in. This book right here. There it is. A smile, a grin, a laugh, that's life at justlaugh.org. John has a book all about laughter and how it heals in the body and human beings, and how important it is to us as well, which, by the way, I am sure John would like to send the book over to Dr. Stephen. I'm sure he would enjoy it. As a matter of fact, interestingly enough, John came out with a DVD of Just Laugh right here, which, Mike, have you seen this?
A lot of money. our talent guy has a lot of money.
Yeah, our talent booker's got bucks. But you don't have this DVD. I am sure if you give him several pounds of sausage, he'll give you one of these.
All right, no problem. Now, what do you want? Want people
Sausage, this was
to
great.
like it?
This is a lot of fun. I want to get you
have
and
to like
Stephen
it.
give his old big hugs.
Subscribe, right? Subscribe, like it, right? Now, listen, if the comments are open now because PZ wants the comments open. Now,
Yes.
I don't want you people leaving comments here about the fat Italian ladies that Stephen Post was talking about when he was working over there in the lampshade factory. All right, you go to his place and leave them comments for him. Okay,
And that
because
the
me and
jokes are not appropriate.
because me
Yeah.
and PZ can attest to having that aunt or grandmother in the family who kind of talk like this from smoking Pall Malls her whole life.
That's right.
So-
And also has a bigger, and she has a huge caboose. A huge caboose.
Until
That
then,
lady got a nice bigger caboose. Yes, subscribe, press the like button, tell your friends. Thanks a lot, guys. You've been too much fun. And thank you, StephenGPost.com. I see Leland smiling. He's like, everything's happy. He's happy. It's all good.
he wants to go to bed, Leland.